done being in.
And then that's a copy.
Okay, great.
This is yours.
No, I got mine.
All right, I'd like to welcome everybody here tonight. It's good to see all of you. This reading is something that has been planned for a while. Wes and I first started talking about it. We were trying to figure out when he could be here in the summer. And I've been trying to get Wes here for years. We've talked about it. And Victor very much wanted to come, and I told him, you won't see this again in your lifetime. So, so it's wonderful to have all of you here. It's wonderful to see you, Scott, always. Jennifer.
Thank you.
So I'm just going to kick this off and welcome up our first reader, and that is going to be Scott Laudati. Scott is the editor-in-chief of Bone Machine. If you guys don't know about that, you should look it up. He's doing some pretty cool stuff. Scott. Thank you.
Just to keep that going, the really cool thing I'm doing is filming all of these poetry tours we go on, which are all on YouTube. So I expect like 27 new subscribers by the time I get back to Jason Reberg's house tonight. Thank you.
You'll have to beat me up later and make sure you get it.
Just need your Wi-Fi.
Okay.
All right, I'm gonna start this. So a couple years ago, I came through Belle, right? I had been hearing about this place for years. I'm friends with many people, I guess, who have been run out of here, and some of them are allowed back sometimes. Most of them are not, I don't think. But I learned a lot coming here and traveling across America. Like, I'm from New York, which is kind of a sheltered place, I guess. So traveling west through Pennsylvania and then Ohio, I saw a much different side of life. This one's called the Ohio Line. This is a country of rivers fed by sewer mains, and our grievances roll with them from the high bluffs on one side down to that new valley ahead. And we never cross back the other way in daylight. Those houses in the hills are always at our backs. And I can see all the past lives in the rear view. The frontier men inventing American poverty. The Shawnee being dragged west to an everlasting purgatory. And the women cooking worms by the recipes of their mothers. The generations who dug their hands into the soil of this final second chance. These losers lapping up a promise that has since rolled back. There are no children left to fall off these cliffs. All the dirt roads are etched to the direction of a single highway. And now these towns have submitted back to jungle. My home has never collapsed, and so I have nowhere to leave my fears. But next time I hope we start to tour out west. And all the sins of my unkempt graves will dig deeper lines on this drying face. Because I know now there is no escape from a strong Ohio wind, looking for a fresh wound to burrow deep. Thanks. So I stayed at the house, like down at the end of this hill. Mark, thank you very much for always putting us up when we're here. But then I got to go to a farmhouse on the Gasconade and meet a lot of the legends that I've been hearing about for years. And this one's called Farmhouse on the Gasconade. It's a warm January in these Ozark foothills. There is no land like this back east, and there are no people like this either. If you feel hunted, do not come here, because this is where the hunters write their poetry. This deck I'm standing on overlooks a brown and fast-moving river, and two brown and fast-moving dogs emerge from it. A bone with fur and dripping veiny blood is held between both of their jaws. And they roll and tug, and they wag their tails like they've just caught the last deer in Missouri. It wasn't a crime 200 years ago to rid these hills of the Osage, but there's blood out here that digs deeper than the roots of those skinny oaks. It's stronger than the currents of those brown rivers. It comes at night when you drive back to this town. The road you left on does not drop you off where you found it. The doors swing open untouched by the wind. And everyone knows the same secret, though they never seem to share it. The Sasquatch at the bottom of the hill, he has raised his family here for generations. He outlasted the Osage, and he'll probably outlast us. because these hunters will expire in 1 or 2 more floods, and all the old men will be gone, forgotten and unpraised. But that Sasquatch has never existed in 2 places at once. And finally, the nothingness of this nothing world will be re-inherited by its rightful servants. Thank you. Essentially, I got to take up from he's not here, he's a lunatic who lives on that hill and makes us moonshine whenever I come here. And I asked him, I was like, oh, you ever see Yetis around here? He was like, I've never seen them, but my dad used to go down to the river and feed them all the time. They're really nice. Without breaking a beat. So, they might be here.
Might want to ask what those Yetis are. Sorry. I grew up on the Gascade.
Did you see any?
No.
No? Okay. He wasn't the only person who told me that somebody you knew somebody who interacted with them. Yeah. This one's called We Write Poems About Bullshit. They write poems about polyamory in Kansas City. They write poems about guys who could not make them come in Lawrence. They write poems about gunfights in Little Rock. They write factory poems everywhere. And I write love poems about a Puerto Rican girl who stabbed me 15 years ago. I write poems about aliens and my dog and literally nothing important at all. But I never write about girls in Ugg boots and skinny jeans or sweatpants with juicy stitched across the ass and those hoop earrings and Staten Island accents. Even though it's what I've spent most of my entire life thinking about. We all write about nothing but bullshit, and nobody who isn't trying to be a poet themselves will ever read any of this nonsense anyway. Yeah. That's where I'm from. They put their name in between the hoops. It's really sexy. Meet down at the mall food court. Hell yeah. Alright, I'm from New Jersey, so I gotta write a poem about Bon Jovi. This is from Drop the Bomb Already. These 2 sexy men up front also had a chapbook drop with Pure City's Trash last month. But some of them are up there. Anyway, this is called We're Halfway There. They promised me it was over, but it never ended. It just got worse. And the shifts grew longer, and the aliens flew away, and the U-boats swam home, and nothing good ever happened. The chickens got fat, and America dropped the blinds on the nightmare plaguing everyone who never made it off the sacred rock. The one all of your great-greats sailed here from when the sun still set on that other empire. And the lucky ones learned you don't look back when it's all on the line. You buy a Happy Meal, and you drive to death in a 99 Toyota Camry while singing the chorus of Living on a Prayer. I had planned to play you guys a bunch of songs, but I left my guitar at Jason's house, so I'm gonna have to read you poems for 10 more minutes. I'm sorry. You're gonna have to listen to this. This is called The Throne. I was big in Occupy Wall Street. I thought we were changing the world. And then I watched a really bad thing happen where the most annoying people of our movement seemed to co-opt the news and stuff like that for 10 years and fucking ruined the world, I think. So this is about that evolution that happened. I don't want them to have hope because I know what they'll do with it. It becomes freedom. It becomes equality. It runs away from the founders, and then it digs deeper trenches. You've had a best friend. Were they there when you needed them? Everyone has been burned by the ones they love. You can hear it in the cop's voice as he clears the street. A man with blood in his eyes. A man who doesn't care at all, who pays his paychecks. Where's the honor of dying for a nation that forces everyone to sleep with the lights on? They know that when the armies retreat and the dark horse gets the gun, there is never a sanctuary for the guilty. The streets run back the other way, and finally the underdog gets the thing it used to pray for. But the throne was always a funny thing, because all men want it, and no one ever knows what to do with it. All right, we're rifling through these. Twilight's Last Gleaming, more cop poems and Occupy Wall Street stuff. Do you guys remember Occupy Wall Street?
Yeah,
okay, cool. It's not funny. I'm not hungry. I wish I died before before the 90s came back. But no one retires at the right time. The fate is a slow burn, and usually the ones who could have been good, they drop out first. They name baseball fields after them, maybe a scholarship, but no one alive cares. Memories replaced too soon by the next draft. And no ghosts hang like frames in these halls, because the dead don't want any part of this shit either. No one is well. The fast clap of the audience was muted long ago. The people needed to eat and they stole the generator. The NYPD shot at the black ones and the white working class didn't like it this time. Because no one is well. They turned the lights on, but the audience doesn't laugh. The twilight last gleamed on some other era. When we didn't have to hide from the dawn, and everyone could still smile in the mirror. These poems are all really fucking old. This is about the Iraq War, but still relevant somehow because these Republican pieces of shit keep getting in, keep doing the same thing. This is called Fish Tank. I believed in everything when I was 20, except when you told me that your tree had been cursed. The Dow Jones crashed that day. Or maybe it was before the end of all things. Back when we watched Saddam's body double drop through the floor, and then the crowd cheered as that nice noose tightened. We didn't look away from your computer screen, and I don't think I did again until your mom showed up and dumped my fish tank full of fancy guppies down the toilet. You packed your YSL heels back in the box while I yelled at your mom, and no one listened as I explained how hard it had been to get those fish to breed. No one listened at the bar that night either. And I guess you were right. Love's only a cure until it becomes a regret. But you could have just left a note when you decided to break my heart. I don't know why the fish had to die too. I think I have two more. That's cool? That's cool. Cool. Every poem I'm reading you is about the same girl, but has no idea that I write poetry. We broke up before I found this part of my life. And somebody DM'd me the other day and they're like, because sometimes I'll get drunk and I'll tweet that about this girl, which is really embarrassing. I have to leave when I wake up. But they're like, oh, it must be so nice to be her and feel appreciated by somebody. And I'm like, literally, this person has no idea I'm doing this, and if they did, they would be really creeped out. We're gonna start with this one. It's called My Suitcase is Packed. I know you're home somewhere out there in Colorado, where the desert flowers wait all year to turn yellow, and horses with Spanish blood, they whip their manes under lightning, while the snows melt down to refill dry beds. Somewhere where enough was enough, and you had to put a continent between me and New Jersey. I've seen that land, and I pulled over to swim naked where those white crests shatter, and freedom is something more than a dream. There are no dead ends on your street. The rains only fall straight down, and even those stray cats come when they're called. I bled for you once when this war was far from over, and the end hasn't gotten any closer, so I guess I'd do it again. Woo! Real quick, I'd just like to thank John Dorsey over here for bringing me, Wesley, who's now my best friend for life. We never really each other. Jason Rivers pretty cool too. He's giving me shit all fucking day. Yeah. And thank you, Mark McLean, for building this thing and having us out here. Thank you guys very much. Yeah. And John Clayton, and you two. It was nice meeting you 2 years ago at Dunaway. Thank you for coming back. Cool. This one's called My Bluest Valentine. Don't bake me a birthday cake this year. Let's go to Wawa and buy a carton of our old cigarettes, and then drive to the Poconos, to that mini golf where we made dirty bets around the windmill, and then both of us got a rash that night from the heart-shaped hot tub. Or we can go back to your parents' basement with the wood panel walls, and that one cold night we slept under the heater, and you whispered to me, pretend it's Aspen. Let's get married this time like we swore we would at 17, when all we wanted was to do drugs and fall in love. And we're still young enough to be good at both. Thank you. Woo! All right. Cool. All right. I'm Scott Laudati. Thank you guys. Who's over there? You don't have to buy them, but it would be cool. And just love every single one of you so much. Thanks, man.
Thank you again, Scott. Thank you for being here, really. I mean, if I wasn't able to, if I didn't already know people, in a lot of cases, we wouldn't get some of the people that we get, so I'm really grateful to be able to do that. Okay. And speaking of meeting new people, I'm going to read Jennifer's bio here. Normally I don't use my phone, but I know hers well. So that's where it starts, Jason.
I know. Next thing I know, forward.
Yeah. I met the next reader last year when I was doing a small reading tour with Justin Ham and Abraham Smith. And I'm hoping we can get Abraham on here again. Would be nice. But, so I'll just read Jennifer's bio that Amazon provides. Jennifer Gravley has published widely in such venues as Southern Poetry Review and North American Review. She is an MFA from the University of Alabama, where she was the winner of the AWP Intros Journals Project in Fiction and held a teaching and writing fellowship. And I'll leave it at that. Jennifer.
All right, thanks everybody for having me. I'm going to do something a little bit different and read the start of a story. It's called Like the Container She Was, and it was published in one of our Missouri journals, Big Muddy from Casino.
Yeah.
Okay. Beatrix didn't find a box or a bottle or a bag in the empty room. Some kind of container was supposed to appear. She was supposed to keep looking until she found it. The room was eclipsed with light, as if she were inside an empty room in her mind, instead of a 3-star hotel off 75 between Chattanooga and Atlanta. She had chosen this retreat because it was near to where she had grown up, but she felt like she could have been anywhere. Apparently, the conversion into a co-working space for wellness-independent contractors had been particularly effective in the visualization room. She felt along the white walls and the improbably white floor in case there was an envelope. Don't open this container yet. Beatrix couldn't tell whether Madrigal's voice was piped in from a tape or live, or her hand shook in embarrassment. She was failing at what she could only assume would be the easiest part of the whole weekend. Beatrix had been the last to go, so everybody else was already waiting. Don't open this container yet, Madrigal's voice repeated, and then Beatrix saw her dead mother. She had one hand crushed inside the other, her signature manifestation of anxiety, a neat trick. A door, Madrigal's voice said, will appear before you. Bring this container with you. Beatrix poked one of her hands over her dead mother's and began walking towards the door. She felt nothing, but her container remained safely underneath her palm. I'm dragging my dead mother, she thought, even though there was no effort involved, no physical or emotional labor, so unlike what it had been like to get her to try to go anywhere when she was alive. I'm dragging my dead mother, who, if I believed in any of this, is meant to be crushing my life purpose in her hands. Beatrix had signed up for this retreat, weekend of joyful self-discovery, on her work computer at the property management firm going on a year ago. When she got the reminder email last month, she bought plane tickets, telling herself it was better to live out a sunk cost fallacy than pay interest on a retreat she didn't attend for the rest of her life. She made the purchase on her phone during a meeting she wasn't invited to, and was shortly thereafter fired from her job in the social sciences division of the small university where she had worked for 2 months. She had provided administrative support for the professors, whose offices were spread throughout several academic buildings. They most often called in an attempt to catch her away from her desk, she was sure, but when they did email, they always included their full signature blocks. She had at first been desperate to know if they did so with each other as well. Zoe, please lead us to the silent meditation room, Madrigal said when Beatrix's dead mother was centered underneath the doorframe, 1 foot in what Madrigal called the visualization, 1 foot in the hallway. Zoe took them to the stairs. Zoe, please pay attention size of her fucking containers, Beatrix mimicked to herself in this seesawing lilt she assumed Madrigal assumed other people found calming while keeping watch on her feet. She had to make sure she didn't trip and send them both, along with all the secrets to her self-fulfillment, tumbling. She hadn't even taken out COBRA coverage, wagering her ability to ride out her unemployment against her tendency towards clumsy self-injury. Her dead mother hadn't said anything, which was one sign this was a surprisingly well-orchestrated hoax. When they got to the second floor, the door to the silent meditation room was wide open. Beatrix approached the door sideways, bringing herself uncomfortably close to her container and her container's hands in their bony, anxious lump. Everyone else, Zoe, science speaker, Portia, oversized seashell, Bob, large plastic laundry basket, and Todd, cedar chest, was already inside the completely empty room, standing in a circle that they opened to admit her. Todd was a woman and Beatrix's roommate. Neither she nor Todd had been prepared for a roommate. The website had not stated there would be roommates. The website had not stated there would not be roommates, but Beatrix intended to note it on her Rate My Retreat review. The accommodations were advertised as rustic, which Beatrix had pictured as a remodeled barn instead of a redecorated chain hotel with the branding carefully replaced with signage for Well Person LLC. The paintings on the accent wall of the silent meditation room were original. They reminded Beatrix of the results of a Saturday workshop she'd taken at Michael's after moving to Los Angeles. Many of the participants were her age, but accompanied by their mothers, as if they couldn't create anything alone. "Take a seat," Madrigal's voice came from the middle of the circle, breaking the promise of the room's name, and Beatrix was mildly surprised to see her body there as well. The other self-discoverer sat cross-legged with too much ease. Was she the only person who had signed up for the weekend retreat without enrolling in months of preparatory yoga classes? Bob and Todd sat to the left of their containers with their hands gently on top, and Portia and Zoe cradled theirs. Portia's too large and Zoe's too small, both looking ridiculous. Beatrix stood still, looking from the others finally back to her container. Her mother had been compliant and companionable so far, but she, after all, was dead, and Beatrix didn't want to push her luck. Also, she couldn't go from standing to sitting cross-legged without needing both her hands for balance and traction. Of course, nothing logically indicated her dead mother actually held her life purpose crushed in her hands, and Beatrix didn't believe in life purposes anymore. But when she had placed her hand over hers, she had unmistakably felt that they were both where they belonged. She envisioned herself uncomfortable at a cocktail party months from now. Beatrix had never been to a cocktail party, laughing at her inflated self-importance. The whole world would end if I let go of my dead mother's hands. She let go nonetheless. Ice cracked throughout her chest, relief flooded when she saw her containers still clasped hands, and Beatrix silently berated herself for both these reactions. Her dead mother, of course she did, sat with as much ease as everyone else had, while Beatrix squatted and placed her hands on the floor, still nearly toppling over into Bob, who grunted and scooched away in disapproval. In these containers, Madrigal said, is everything you need to know about yourselves, everything you need to know about the lives you are meant to live. Beatrix wanted to believe she didn't believe her, but she had believed enough to put $2,000 on her credit card. She was still carrying a balance of almost $9,000 from the move and had already put another $1,657 on it at the airport Chili's 2 yesterday to come here, even after Madrigal had signed her response to Beatrix's Facebook message, Madrigal. She wanted to believe she didn't believe. She pictured herself sneering as she repeated Madrigal's word to an enthralled audience at the cocktail party, but at the same time, her hands slickened. She could smell her own perspiration, the bottom of her mouth filled with saliva. She wanted it. She pictured herself ripping her dead mother's hands apart, prying open the curled anxiety fingers. But we're not going to open them. We come to these hills this weekend to discover these truths ourselves, and we must do the work. Bob grunted again, and Beatrix wanted to hurt him as a proxy for Madrigal. If she wanted to do the work, she'd have found sliding scale therapy, or offered herself on Craigslist to wannabe life coaches who needed hours for their fake certification courses, all without the companionship of a mother she'd said goodbye to too many times already. Beatrix trailed the group down the hall, around the corner, and down another hall. If anyone wanted to gander at her and her container, they would have to turn around to do it. Zoe didn't hold the door open for them, and she had to catch it with her hand to keep it from slamming into her dead mother's face. The expedition conference room was completely empty, not even a rickety plywood table with a carafe of burnt coffee in the back. Beatrix guided her container to the line everyone had formed against the wall. In the center of the room, on top of the hotel carpet, was not a rug exactly, more like a large square carpet that had been cut out of some other room, its edges frayed. It was a walking labyrinth. Beatrix recognized the pattern from one of the photos on the Joyful Self-Discovery Retreat and internet coaching Instagram site. Clearly, it had been woven to mimic a famous walking labyrinth from somewhere else in the world, from somewhere out in the world. Beatrix had thought more of this retreat would take place outside. Was the constraint of the indoors meant to be a metaphor? All the work is internal. But did Madrigal expect anyone to buy that a walking labyrinth inside an empty expedition conference room counted? The makeshift rug took up most of the floor space, leaving only an edge of the room's carpet around its perimeter, larger on one end, since the room was of course rectangular. Walking meditation, Madrigal said, is so good for us, so healthy, and we can figure out so much about ourselves in the space that we make by quieting our minds. As you walk the path, concentrate on your steps and the weight of your container. Feel how it weighs on you, or doesn't, how you notice it, or forget it's there. Will we run into each other, Bob asked. You have nothing to worry about, Madrigal said. Walk slowly and concentrate on maintaining the same speed throughout. I know you can all do it. What about on the way back? Bob persisted. Yes, this is a universal labyrinth, Madrigal said. She made to push her hair out of her face, even though it was already tied back into a ponytail, as if this was going to be an exercise of great physical exertion for her. On the way out, if you pass someone still on the path inward, simply step to your right and let them pass. Madrigal took a deep breath and closed her eyes. Portia, begin. We all shuffled forward and waited. Madrigal didn't open her eyes. Was she simply counting in her head, or could she hear the shuffle of feet on the carpet to know how long to wait in between? Todd, begin. Bob, begin. Zoe, begin. Beatrix. Beatrix stepped forward. The path was one person wide. Should she go before or after her container? It felt most natural to follow her mother, but she was here on a self-discovery journey and wasn't allowed to pry open her dead mother's hands to get the answer she's flown back across the country to get. Why shouldn't she go first for once? Surely her dead mother could follow her like the container she was. I'm thinking about my steps, Beatrix thought as she stepped into the labyrinth. Would she be able to feel her mother's presence the way she could sense a living person who came up behind her and stayed? She felt the least Madrigal could have done was project some more adept spiritual leader's YouTube video on walking meditation into one of the blank beige walls before throwing them into the act. Now she had to do yet another thing wrong, not only in front of Madrigal and the other self-discoverers, but also her mother, who had materialized from the grave to judge her self-actualization efforts. Beatrix couldn't believe she still hadn't made it to the first turn. She began to drop each foot with the heaviness of resentment. Finally, she started to turn herself to face the way she'd come, and she sneaked a look to her right. Her dead mother was there, following her without complaint, without expression, hands still strangling the living daylights out of each other. Beatrix had to step down hard to keep from something rising up in her throat. A giggle, tears, as she realized that the most pious looking among them was her container. She wasn't looking down or over at anyone else, including Beatrix. She didn't seem to be struggling with the weight of anything. The mechanics of walking meditation, or at least this version that Beatrix was sure was in no way representative, were surprisingly easy. Basically, Beatrix walked and thought about whatever she wanted, occasionally feeling guilty and thinking about her feet. Every now and then, catching a glimpse of her dead mother and feeling relieved or furious or anything but grateful. She couldn't believe her past self had chosen to go into more credit card debt specifically for her own self-discovery, and her mother had to horn in on that, even after her death, even after everything else Beatrix had had to charge while settling her mother's affairs, which she hadn't bothered with at all, as if she would live forever. "How long are we going to do this?" Beatrix heard Bob ask petulantly from somewhere across the room. She was glad she wasn't expecting to leave a changed person. Even if she was, what could her mother hold in her hands that Beatrix hadn't already heard out of her mouth 1,000 times anyway? Finally, Beatrix reached the center. She paused for a moment and looked up. Madrigal stood directly across the room, her eyes still closed. Had they been closed this whole time? She had great faith that none of them would mow any of the others down. And then Beatrix's dead mother stepped right into her. She was moving, of course, only at the rate Beatrix herself had been moving a moment before, but the collision jarred her. Her dead mother's hands, still clasped in front of her, hit her in the back. "This feels like a metaphor," Beatrix thought, and then laughed. It would be an overstatement to say that her laugh echoed. The room wasn't that large, even with nothing in it but a few people, their containers, and a ragged carpet, but no one else made a sound or altered their course. Madrigal's eyes didn't flutter. Beatrix stepped forward and retraced her steps. No one was left to be in her way. "Carry this piece with you," Madrigal said, her eyes still closed. "I recommend staying here and spending the dining hour in silent contemplation, as eating later in the day will only weigh you down unnecessarily before rest. However, if you need nourishment, there are vegetarian wraps available in the breakfast nook, and we'll meet at 8 a.m. in the silent meditation room." Zoe nodded her head sagely and followed behind Madrigal like a puppy. Madrigal probably didn't eat at all. Though he was the only male self-discoverer, Bob did not score his own room because Zoe was rooming with Madrigal, clearly giving her both an unfair advantage and grounds for a sexual harassment complaint. Beatrix couldn't tell whether they'd been together before the retreat or if the rooming situation was a happy accident, but she imagined they were off to engage in the very hot sex variety of meditation. She had the sudden idea that her dead mother could hear her thoughts and felt the vein in her forehead throb. Would she be hungry? Could she eat? It seemed rude to assume she couldn't, and she definitely needed help since her hands were still occupied, tightly hanging on to everything she presumably thought Beatrix needed to have a better life and refusing to hand it over. So that's just the beginning of the story. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. I'm sad to see Big Money go. Yeah, and everything. All right. So I wanted to thank Mark again. I know that Scott did. I know that Wes probably will. Thank you, Mark and Tony, for letting us use the space, as always.
Welcome.
It's wonderful. So with that, we will close the feature part of the reading with my friend Wesley Scott McMasters. We were introduced about 15 years ago by a nefarious character that we're both kind of friends with, I guess. I've had the privilege of knowing Wes as a friend, as a publisher, as an editor. Wes teaches at Carson Newman University in Jefferson City, Tennessee, where he is the poetry editor of the Red Branch Review, in addition to also still being involved with Red Flag Poetry. So, but
Yes.
Hello. Thank you, John. Thanks to everybody for being here. I'm going to tell some jokes that all of these guys heard last night too, so just going to repeat myself a little bit. Another person that connected me to John early was Amanda Oakes, a good friend of ours out in Pennsylvania who does great editorial work and great community building work, and she ran Words Dance for a long time. So my first little bit of poetry came out on that. So this is my mini Eris tour. I'm starting at the beginning, working towards the end. So I've got a poem here. I love writing poems about people and for people. Some of them know, some of them don't. This one is called For Hank, and another friend of ours who I was hoping was going to come on this adventure with me, but he bailed on the last moment, like he usually does. Damn it, Hank. So this is for Hank. There's a woman somewhere on this planet who haunts me like a ghost, but damn your ghost, your Yorick, and those damn spots. Listen, if you loved me, would you know how I like my eggs and how I take my toast? And I guarantee that there's a God, and someday I'd take my son to church only so his faith can waver, because strong men question everything. Like, am I still strong if I want a savior? Am I still strong if sometimes I want to be held too? There are phases that young, smart, strong men go through, phases accompanied by the spirit attributed to J. Alfred Prufrock and Edgar Allan Poe, and the fucking sonnets from John Keats, but not any of those books or those movies that the blonde girlfriend in college made me watch. My grandfather did think she was really pretty though, and this one time she bought me an Easter basket with instant coffee in it because she knew I drank Maxwell House but didn't know the difference. That same grandfather used to ask me if I knew that the government was poisoning us. I would tell him that I did not know that. But I know now, because love and life are really always somehow enough, and sometimes it hurts to remember the woman who left you behind while somewhere your own home waits empty as a kind of payback. I cry at night sometimes, and that's none of your business, but she's in someone else's arms, while someone else's arms are bleeding, and bleach sits waiting next to the bathtub. She knows not what she does, but she walks like a punk song in a Mazda with a sunroof, and a girl who's been parking before. And I know John Keats and Homer, and I slept alone that night and a lot of other nights too, while I read Chapman's Homer in its truest form, the form that I don't give a fuck about, because Homer died, and Keats died, and who did they love, and does it even matter, because forget your legacy, and we don't have one. We have no legacy, we are not immortal. Ginsberg saw the best minds of his generation passed before him, but the best of mine are right here, right now. And there's nothing between us, and there's nothing better than what you want to do right now. And there is no one more beautiful than my mother making coffee incorrectly with bleary eyes and 2 scoops too many because she doesn't drink it, but wanted to make sure I had coffee when I got up early the next day. We have no legacy, but we do have each other. I had 2 years, and now I'm crying all the time. Like, Jesus. All right. I forgot that one makes me sad. All right, what about, let's do, this is a poem called, I was going to do Daily Affirmation. That one makes me sad too, and I'm already starting to cry, so we're going to skip that one. Let's do, My Mama Don't Like You and She Likes Everyone, which is also a Justin Bieber song, and if you don't like Justin Bieber, you're wrong. The smell of my grandmother's house before the dementia took hold of her mind was somewhere between old and weak coffee and an over-clean kitchen counter. And there are moments in my own home when I mimic that smell accidentally, but just for a moment before it slips away, along with the memory of sitting at her dining room table watching the birds outside. I lost the poem I wanted to read, and I'm afraid that it was the best one that I've ever written, and now it's gone too. Scribbled somewhere with a splash of coffee on it. It was about coffee also, because of course it was. I only have one mode, and it's coffee. Importantly, it was about how my mother sometimes makes coffee for me in the mornings, despite the fact that she doesn't drink it or know how it's supposed to taste. This poem is actually about the other poem that I just read. Intertextuality. Maybe because that same smell that I remember fondly in her mother's kitchen reminds my mother of a different person and one who was less kind. Ultimately, everything depends, after all, on a cup of coffee and styrofoam burnt and dumped out on the way to hang drywall on Father's Day, or the cup of coffee that sat cold for 3 hours in a diner in a college town that you took a bus to so we could talk and you could attend a party. I'm still not sure if you came to screw me or screw me over because you knew that we both cried when you walked away, and I saw you turn around waiting for me to do the same, but I didn't. I walked away knowing I was wrong, knowing I should have stayed, and then I had a coffee somewhere in Venice when what I really wanted was wine, and a soft glow from a young woman melts into the backdrop of summer grass, blowing blissfully in a breeze that will not and cannot stop, because the second it stops moving, we fear that God has died, and we celebrate that he's risen, we say he is risen indeed, we say that it is finished, but it sure doesn't seem finished to me, because cracked and grease-covered cans praying for me over a cup of coffee first thing in the morning makes me wish that I had the soul of a man who cries over his daughter growing up and the people he can't save. Thanks. I'm gonna make an effort here to not read the things that make me sad. All right, so I wrote this book to get my wife to marry me, and it worked. So this is the first poem in this book is called "My Lover Knows How the Sun Took Form." This was published on Mammoth Books. It was an Eastern PA press run by Tony Valone, who was really a powerhouse in that part of the world, that part of the country. And we lost him earlier this year, and a pretty big legacy along with him. But anyway, My Lover Knows How the Sun Took Form. The Iroquois or the Kanasani have known the northeastern parts of the country long before my ancestors, horse thieves, ever set foot on a boat. The Kanasani tell how the great island of North America was formed. Twin brothers, carried by a mother from the upper world, sunk into the lower until a turtle agreed to carry her, until her children were born after fighting in her womb and one tore from her side. The other took their mother's head and fashioned the sun, took their mother's body and built the moon. But my lover is very much alive, and her face shines as bright as any star, and her body glows warmer than any moon. I can't help but wonder why, or who told this story for the first time, who witnessed these moments. Did her lover wake before she did? Is she the one who remembers the umbrella, who sits at the entryway of the kitchen humming while her lover cooks? I am convinced that my lover heard this story, or maybe even saw it happen. Maybe not on this continent, maybe outside of Eden or Nippur. My lover knows how the sun took form and chooses to look at me when she wakes up. Thanks. I lied, I'm still crying here. Okay. This poem is called Some Days I Wake Up and Tupac is Dead. Tupac is dead, of course, but I had a roommate who, when he expressed to me sometimes how his mood, he was a very mercurial person, and sometimes he would wake up, this is Nick Katsiadis, one of my best friends, and he was really grumpy one morning. I said, "What's up, man?" He said, sometimes I wake up and Tupac is alive, and sometimes I wake up and Tupac is dead. It's like, I get that. So, some days I wake up and Tupac is dead. The South is a ghost, and so is she, haunting my morning coffee, staining porcelain, straining memories of everything I wanted to be. The South is a ghost, and so am I. If I could whisper to her, I might ask, do you still wake up with a ghost of me next to you, while I'm replaced by the lover who left for a glass of water? The South is a ghost, and so are we. Thanks. All right. Here is a drinking poem for Amanda Oakes, a friend of ours I mentioned. This is called Mars is Going to Pass Over My Natal Midheaven. I was going to quit drinking yesterday, but I've been reading a lot of Berrigan and Bukowski for some reason, and they're no substitute for whiskey, or the feeling when you wake up late and forget to brush the taste out of your mouth. My spirit is limber and just a little heady during the witching hour, so one more won't hurt. Thanks. All right, let's see. I'm going to jump to something else here in a second. Here's a John Dorsey poem. This is for John Dorsey when he came to read, and we had a night of debauchery somewhere in Indiana, Pennsylvania, that ended at an Eden Park with 4 orders of zucchini planks. Like a good hard night should end with fried vegetables. Late for a meeting that should have been an email, my hip feels like it's out of place. Maybe knocked loose from the shoulder bag I should have long ago exchanged for a backpack. Or maybe one night too many on the floor like the one in the Days Inn in the same town Jimmy Stewart grew up in, after a long night of beer and pasta and steak and cigarettes and talking about love. I'm gonna switch to next era. This is the Bathtub Madonna. My neck of the woods in Pennsylvania, it's very, very Catholic, and in the poorer neighborhoods, you would see it was this weird phenomenon, I don't know, probably in the 80s when people were remodeling old houses and they were getting rid of cast iron bathtubs. And so they would, instead of throwing them out, they would take the bathtub and they would put a Madonna statue in it. And so I found this very interesting. I thought every place had these. Apparently that's not true. So I kind of fashioned this character named the Bathtub Madonna. She's a little bit like my mom. So this came out on Riverdog Press, John Dorsey and Victor Clevenger. Really beautiful little chat. So this is called Bathtub Madonna Has a Few Questions About Transubstantiation. What is it again? She asks, wrinkling her forehead, wiping crumbs from church clothes. He adjusts his eyeglasses and tie, spreads cream cheese on bagel. He says, the bread and the wine literally become the body and blood of Christ. She nods and sips coffee and bites dry toast. Literally, she repeats. He bites into the bagel, wipes cream cheese onto his sleeve. It's very complex. You don't need to get it, you just need to believe it. Her nod slows. She stares at the coffee's colors change to copper in the autumn sun through dark red falling leaves. Thanks. Couple of short ones here real quick. Bathtub Madonna likes sweet red wine, the kind that comes in a box, sometimes with bread or some kind of fancy sounding cheese on the side. For her, it only tastes sacred on Friday afternoons with phone off the hook. And Bathtub Madonna spills Friday's wine on the edge of the checkbook, but doesn't hurry to clean it. She's already written all the checks for the month and has just a bit to spare, so she takes her time dancing just a little to some Bob Dylan tune. And I'll tell you a secret. When I wrote this, Bathtub Madonna commits suicide at the end, and nobody ever got that, and I've embraced the reading that other people have had, so now that I've given you the secret, you can let me know if you think that's what happens here too. This poem, the last one in the chat, and then I'll read one or two new ones real quick. Bathtub Madonna's Last Supper is prepared carefully. She knows the weight of kosher salt in her hand to add at the end. It's the same weight as heart, same amount of carrots and celery from someone's garden, parsley from the porch with boiled bones from last night make the stock all afternoon. Each weighs the same as the blankets for her son held under her arm as his fever gets worse. He chews raw garlic chased with a hot toddy, a remedy handed down by a priest after the order of Melchizedek. A rooster crows a few times. She sits for the first time today, palms and wrists to the sky, and she falls asleep quickly. Thanks. Maybe one more time?
Yeah, sure.
So I'm writing these divination poems now, divination like water witching. I'm really fascinated by the idea of water witching and the fact that divination, where they're using sticks to find water, also refers to gaining knowledge by supernatural means. So divination is also like prophecy and all kinds of cool things. I just love the idea. So I'm writing these divination poems. The first one was really good. I think that the other ones are pretty good too, but my wife told me they get progressively worse. So we'll see. This is divination poem 2, which is also a poem for my wife. Her childhood priest passed away. I'm not Catholic, my wife is Catholic, her family's Catholic, my mom is Catholic, and I spent some time around the church, so I'm very kind of fascinated with the imagery and the idea. But so her childhood priest's name was Father Gentili, but he spelled it like Gentile, which I also got a kick out of. So this poem is called Divination Poem 2, or pronounced Gentili to my disappointment. Father Gentili has passed away. This is also a Linkin Park poem. A lot going on here. Okay. Father Gentili has passed away. Maybe a coincidence. I've been thinking about Chester, singer from a hybrid genre rock band who took his own life, when my wife tells me this news about her family priest. His legacy of comforting mothers of sons dead by suicide despite the official position of the church displayed prominently in his obituary. Whispered rebellion promises a redemption for the unredeemable echoed softly against the sanctuary wall just in case. Thanks. All right, and so these divination poems have evolved into vision poems. So my last poem is called A Vision of St. Lucy outside of the heavy metal show. St. Lucy, I don't remember exactly how she died, but the representations of her, she's holding her eyeballs on a platter, which I think is one of the most metal things that I've ever seen. So I love St. Lucy. She's also a patron saint of writers, not just poets, but writers generally. So the character that I'm imagining now is having these visions of St. Lucy all the time, which is funny because visions and St. Lucy's holding her eyeballs, I have a lot of fun with the jokes that only I care about. Yeah, this will be my last poem. Thanks again to John for having me. Thanks to Mark for having this awesome space and allowing for poetry to be in the middle of Missouri and for the chance to come out here and share. And thanks for Jason for putting up with me and Scott. And you also get to witness Scott and Wesley's last night in OAC before they get booted, probably, and join the crew of people who have been exiled from Belle, Missouri.
We couldn't do it.
Yeah. All right, last poem. A vision of St. Lucy outside of the heavy metal show. Is it loud in there? She says. Yes, it is, I confirm. Are they scary looking? She asks. Yes, but everyone is very nice, I say. In fact, the band members are all vegans. Oh, do you feel like you have something to prove? She asks. When I don't respond, she says, all of this energy, the toughness, seems like it's masking something tender and painful. It doesn't mask anything. It helps me understand it, I guess, I suggest. It seems like bravado, and I hate to tell you, but your long hair doesn't hide your red neck. Her blank eyes flutter in her hands. I never wanted to hide who I am, my voice cracks in protest. And who are you, she asks, and my ears echo against themselves in silence. Thanks. Thanks for having me.
Thank you again, Wes, for being here. It's like I said, and I wasn't kidding. I wanted to bring you here for a long time, and I know that you and Matt had talked about coming out this way, and he's welcome to come too if he ever makes the trip. Maybe you and Amanda would make that trip.
That would be awesome. Yeah.
That would be good. So I am just going to have everyone go ahead and take a 10-minute break. Come up and talk to these guys. I know Scott has books on him, and we will come back in 10 minutes, and I will give you the information for the next reading, which I'm looking up right here on my phone. So thank you so much. Thank you.